Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC studio, where we're counting down to SK Gaming versus Origen. You haven't seen this before, have you? It's a little new part
Surprise!
of our set. Surprise! It's a couch. You're sitting here, we're chilling, and hopefully that will make us have some interesting discussions about the two teams on the docket now. However, first, Kia player of the game for Vitality, Comp.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Great first game back. I think the Vitality overall played very well. I think it was obviously slow, and it was really good hearing insight from Melitza. You expect this from many rookie players. They showcased a bit of nerves. They showcased some slow play, but ultimately they got the win. And as Cabashad tweeted out, it's already halfway there to the record of last split.
Great point. And I mean, it was so long awaited, right, Melitza? But it's good to see that Comp now is also working very well in the bot lane as well. So good things coming from the side of Vitality, feels like.
Yeah, I think Comp and Lebrov is a bot lane I'm going to be watching quite a lot throughout the split because they do have some synergy already built in, and Lebrov has been a support that has just slowly risen through the ranks in my estimation. We don't have a great support pool here in Europe. I think that bot lane could be something that we'll have to keep our eyes on for a while.
Okay, let's see about that. Great start for Vitality, but after a terrible start to 2020 for SK Gaming, they are now also trying something new for the summer split. Their mid lane rookie ZaZee is joining the squad, and with that, Jenax moves to the top lane. First up, who is ZaZee?
Well, Vedius always says that he's the bird in Lion King.
That's ZaZee.
ZaZee.
This is the mistake you've been making the entire time. ZaZee is a really good player that a lot of people have been saying kind of missed out on the generation of Abadage, Nemesis, and Larson. He's like the next player to step into that role. We saw him in EU Masters in summer last year, playing for Big. He won. He's mechanically very strong and likes to play control mages. I actually had a chance to talk with him across the course of the last week, and he was saying his expectation is that he can prove he's at least top 5 mid laners here in Europe this split. And I think if he can do that, it's a really big stepping stone for SK to start challenging for better than 9th and 10th space.
I'm excited to see him play. I think the meta right now is really going to suit his style. We already saw Melitza instantly picking up that Azir and looking pretty confident on it. I know that ZaZee is a big Azir player, and you question whether it's actually going to be banned away from him today. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that with this addition, along with moving Jenax to the top lane, who I honestly think ever since he's joined SK has been a positive impact, will hopefully better enable Trick, because he's really been the big question mark. And I know many fans were like, why wasn't a new jungler picked up? Why are we not seeing new talent in this role? Because he was underwhelming during the spring split. But I think Trick has always found success when he's not the one trying to snowball his laners, when his laners are actually more independent and they can just kind of lane for themselves. And hopefully this brings more and enables Trick more moving into this split. But we'll have to wait and see if this formula is what brings success for us.
Yeah, we can't really tell. What can you say, though, about a Jenax? We've seen a lot of him. He was actually, for me, one of the highlights of SK when they did win those games. And even in the games that they lost, and just showing his flexibility in champion pool makes me think that he'll do just fine in the top lane.
Yeah, especially early on, his Aatrox was one of his key champions that he performed really well on. I think that top lane is very much about communication and being able to discuss with your jungler, where your position in the wave is, whether you can teleport down into the bottom lane, whether you can impact fights. And apparently he has really good communication. I talked to Jeza's as well, and he says he thinks that Jenax takes some really good champions into the top lane, has also expanded his pool into general top lane champion pool, but is really the key point of communication for this team. So that's where I want to see him shine.
All right, let's see what SK can do. Not an easy feat for them. They're up versus Origen. Origen, who are 4th in spring, and was heralded as the best lineup changes, let's say, by a lot of analysts coming into the spring split of 2020, and just a well-rounded roster overall. 4th, not necessarily as good as some people projected them to be, but how do we see their journey continuing here through summer with this roster?
I think we talked about it at the beginning of the day, Sjokz, and I want to remind people again, a lot of people will look at the score lines of when Origen played against Fnatic and G2 and see the 3-1s and think they just got smashed, but that wasn't the case at all. They were incredibly competitive games. These teams were very close to forcing those 5th games out of both our top teams in Europe, and if it weren't for that big upset that Mad were able to make, then there's a good chance that Origen would have made it into 3rd place. They would have had that best of 5 against Mad. But the reality is they haven't had those opportunities like Mad have. They haven't been able to make those surprise upsets happen. And that's why they've always been sat in this kind of just outside spots, and we need to see this change from Origen because it's been too long since they've really been sitting at the position to take the podium.
I really agree with that. I think there is a strong argument to say you have to make those things happen for yourself, right? Yes, Mad had the opportunities, but Origen need to put themselves in a position where they get those opportunities too. However, I look at some of the superstars on this team and the reason that we praise them, the Nukeducks, the Xerxes, the Alpharis, and I think we're moving into a meta that could really suit them, right? When you have Xerxe being able to play a scaling jungler, especially things like Nidalee that he is known for historically, he can farm up, he can stop his enemy jungler from doing too much. When you have Upset playing teamfight oriented AD carries, you can scale into the game. This is such a perfect storm for Origen, and it could be the time we see them really start challenging for that title.
And we've also got to remember that Upset during the offseason did have some special training with the one and only support.
I was actually very afraid for Destiny because after I played Yuumi with Upset, he was like, "Oh, mate, you didn't play Nautilus? You played a different champion." Oh, dear,
and obviously we kid, but it shouldn't be understated how talented of an AD carry Upset is, right? We highlighted Alphari and we talked about how he was our mid-split MVP last split. I believe he was even the All-Pro top laner at the end of last split as well. I think the meta might not suit him, especially based on what we've seen so far. Depends on what direction Origen choose to take. But if it does become the AD carry meta, this is Upset's real opportunity to become that top AD in Europe, which he's been fighting for so long to try on it.
And we also joke about kind of Medic and Destiny or whatever, but you know, you are going to build that synergy up if you're playing together for a longer period of time. So now in summer, maybe that can blossom a bit more. And I think a lot of what I'm taking from this discussion from Origen is we know the components are there, and that is what we have heard every single split because it's been the truth.
Yeah.
They always had great players. They always had great plans, great coaches, everything, but it's always that woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? And I think it's just the same now because it's very hard for us to say they will this or they will that. They have not proven to us that they can, but we know that the promise is there. So what kind of a statement would you like to see from them in these first 3 games, which could be so important in the race for playoffs?
I think the real big statement is the game tomorrow, right? Like if you can go up against G2 and if you can actually challenge them and be close, like the games in the playoffs, like the second game they should have, third game they should have won really. They only just lost out at the inhibitor. If they can have games like that, then I have a lot of faith to Origen. If they go in and just get demolished by G2, then I start to worry a little bit because although Origen can consistently get third, you have to be looking at more than that for this team.
I'm expecting a statement game against SK today.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Typically, you expect clear favorites, but I agree very much with Medic that tomorrow is a very clear indicator of what we can come to expect from Origen. And I think that coming into the beginning of a season, Origen is a team that is typically very well prepared. Some of the issues I find is when the meta evolves quite dramatically during a regular season. Sometimes they can be a little slow to adapt, but at the start, I feel like Origen can and should come in well prepared, very similar to what we saw at the beginning of spring, rather.
And we have a small delay getting into Champ Select, so let's also talk about the opportunity here for SK, because it's quite easy to say Origen should be the team that comes out on top. But a note you made in the break, Vedius, was, well, these are the first games of the split, you know? Maybe they're a bit slower. Maybe you have a bit more opportunity if you're a new player like ZaZee.
Yep.
Maybe you can take it slow and make something happen. Is SK going to get this opportunity versus Origen?
I mean, it's realistic, because if SK get a comp where it's Azir plus Ezreal, you're immediately like, well, okay, you can clearly see what the win condition is here, and this is very realistic because it's not like in Europe we have very strong talent. Mechanically, I have a lot of faith in ZaZee to be able to do his job on the role, right? A lot of the thing that separates top teams from middle of the pack teams from bottom teams is your understanding of how to use pressure, how to move around the map, your overall macro and understanding of how to play at the pro level. And one of the big debates is, will these rookies be able to do that at the very first bat? The thing you can say for certain is Origen do for sure. So that's going to be the biggest contrast, where can SK draft a way that makes it too difficult for Origen to find a clean game, for example.
I really think Crownshot is has a big opportunity here as well, especially in a scaling AD carry meta. He was probably their best player in spring, in my opinion. He was high up in the CS per minute numbers. He was high up in the CSD numbers. He was the shining light for this team. And if you can put him on something like the Ezreal that can have a real big impact later on, perhaps SK stand a chance.
All right, a lot of questions for both of the teams that are opening. Day continues with SK versus Origen. So let's head over to our casters.
Hi, welcome. We're getting ready for OG versus SK. I wasn't drawing on the quarantine plastic. That's not what that's for. I was getting ready for OG versus SK. And as mentioned on the desk, I think OG favorite game. We're looking for that statement, you know, oh, come out swinging. And by swinging, we mean come out scaling. But I think on the opposite side, SK, they don't get the blank slate treatment that we gave to Vitality. And that's a big deal because I think that...
Why not?
They didn't make a lot of changes. They had weak solo lanes. They swapped one of their weak solo lanes. And then they brought in a new guy. So there's one new guy. But I don't think that revolutionizes the team. Their strongest point in the game, which is Crownshot, I still don't believe is set up for success enough. And as a result, they're kind of in my prove it to me bucket.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You have to show me more for me to believe in this SK team. And obviously this is a great opportunity to do that. But until they do, I'm not a believer in SK Gaming.
But I do feel like the bar to prove something is quite low for SK. Like, I don't think they need to necessarily win this game. If they do, that's just like the cherry on top, especially in a super week. But we just want to see some life from SK, not getting bodied in lane phase, which is what really felt like it happened in spring, that they didn't even get to play the 5v5. Like, Crownshot never got to shine when your best player is probably your ADC. He never really got to go to that point and be an ADC. So I hope that we get Crownshot to team fights. I hope the Trick experiment pays off, where Trick gets to have self-sufficient laners and kind of puppeteer them to success. And I really want to see Crownshot Ezreal. I think it is by far his best champion. We just saw Vitality showcase the power of Ezreal when Comp got his hands on it, especially in tandem with Yuumi. Yeezy, by the way, that's what we're calling it. The Yuumi Ezreal, the Yeezy. Thank you, Twitter.
That's the one you want to go for? All right, the Yeezy's good. Vlesk had a good one too, but we'll give it to the Yeezy. So it's now from now on known as the Yeezy. It's been decided. It's been locked in. There's no more debate on that one. But we can continue to debate on the merits of the SK solo lanes, because I was a really big Jenax believer.
You were. You're like a big Jenax fanboy.
I was a big Jenax fan because he came in on Aatrox in like summer of last year, and he's like, bam, he was like laying the smack down. And I was like, really, I was like, oh man, this guy, he's going to be great. And then kind of all fell apart. Like, we saw some signs of life on some of those Mordekaiser games.
I don't think that's Jenax's fault. Like, everything kind of fell apart for us.
For sure. And that's kind of why I'm still, despite my skepticism, holding out hope that this guy can really body people as a top laner, because you know what's a top lane champ? It's Aatrox. And I want to see more of that flair. Now, if they relegate him to tank duty and it does just become the let's peel for Crownshot show, I think that's probably a fair choice. But I wouldn't mind also seeing a complete turnaround from last season where SK can show us that it doesn't just have to be about Crownshot, and it can be about their solo lanes popping off.
My only concern is that because their opponent is Origen, you know?
You mean it's hard to pop off against Alphari?
Or Nukeduck?
Or Nukeduck,
or
yeah.
Upset?
True.
Big task in front of SK today. That said, again, the bar is fairly low. We don't expect them to win here, but I do want to see new life from this roster. And on the other side for Origen, the Analyst has said a statement game. Prove to us that you really are the third best team in the LEC. And if you had your shot at Mad Lions, that you would have dunked on them. I want to see some fire from Origen.
And that in its own way, a lot more pressure than on Origen than on SK Gaming. Ooh, this is new spicy music for Champions Select. We get in. SK going to be on the blue side. Origen going to be on the red. Champions of the day that we've seen banned away consistently. It has been the Varus. It has been the Thresh. It has been the Syndra. This is the second game now that Kalista has been banned away. And interestingly, Graves additionally going to join that ban pool. And with 2 AD carries already banned out from Upset, you have to feel like SK are trying to force him onto something. And it can't be the Varus, so maybe they're just trying to pick Ezreal away and force him onto a tier 3 AD carry, essentially.
This does feel really telegraphed for an Ezreal first pick. You ban 3 bot lane champions because Syndra can be that flex. The Varus has now been banned. If you don't pick or ban the Ezreal here, I would imagine it's snap grabbed from SK.
You could ban that, or you could ban the Yuumi and try to say, hey, like, this champ is significantly lower priority without that pairing. Although I still think Ezreal is next in line as strongest AD carry, even without the Yuumi beside him. Interesting game here. I like that SK Gaming have come in with a very clear plan. And
there you go.
Yeah, Yuumi ban comes out from Origen, and Jenax played a lot of Mordekaiser. Could just lock that one in. Definitely not my favorite blind pick, but as we saw, it's very good into Wukong and would limit that from the side of Origen. But it will be the Ezreal, as you said, Froskurinn. They're not concerned about losing the Yuumi. They will just lock that one in.
So, what's it going to be in response? Now, Upset still has things like Lucian that he can go towards. He can play more of the old school ADCs like the Tristanas, the Caitlyn's, the Ashes. So there's plenty of options there. Maybe we see a Soraka ADC running around. Really good against poke comps.
What are you trying to condemn me to? Casting the Soraka, what, like Leona lane? Is that the ideal pairing? For now, it'll be the Gragas for Xerxe. Not necessarily the Nidalee that we were very excited about, but still overall a very solid, very versatile champion. A champion that allowed OG to really get out the gate running at the start of spring last year when no one else was playing Gragas. They were getting it every single game, and Misfortune will get picked up. Has been nerfed since we last saw her. A little bit less oomph in that strut, but still solid overall.
This is a staple OG composition. All I'm waiting for is the Nautilus to come in for Destiny, especially if that Thresh gets locked in. And then these are, you know, spring Origen ready to go. That is, I think Gragas was like the Xerxe special in spring.
Yeah, absolutely was. And look, MF Thresh is was one of my favorite duos in spring, so they've at least limited that, but that just means that they've set Destiny up for, surprise, surprise, the Nautilus pick. Although they could take some time here. They can try to match picks here, match mid laner or match support, but something is going to get pinched here in the second phase from both teams, so Origen really need to pick what exactly they want to focus on.
Yeah, and it's kind of what's more important for them right now. Do you grab for Destiny because you see exactly what the bot lane you're going for, or do you try to pick something to deal with that Azir? I feel like Nukeduck has the much deeper champion pool, much more flexible champion pool than Destiny does, so prioritizing Destiny's big comfort pick on that Nautilus, and it is spring Origen all over again. This is not about development for this roster in summer, this is about refinement. They are refining their strong identity and preparing themselves for Worlds.
And now the Olaf taken away. They want to shut down Trick. They want to limit his options. SK Gaming, Corki ban. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Zoe hit the table as well now that they've banned out the other scaling option into Azir. Could obviously go to Victor. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see a Nukeduck Zed this game, but it seems a bit unlikely.
Still options like Jarvan as the jungle pool is getting pinched, that Olaf and that Trundle. So Trick still has plenty of options to play around. And something that SK's composition is missing is hard engage.
Yeah, Jarvan feels like the most clear. Obviously very telegraphed, but has some solid interactions into Gragas, especially with his ulti, making him unstoppable in the animation, can mitigate that cast, can mitigate a lot of Nautilus's CC as well.
So he came through as it was the LeBlanc taken away from Nukeduck.
I forgot completely about LeBlanc. She was the hot at the end of spring split, but yeah, there it is, going very late in the draft.
Oh no, Orianna. Is that maybe giving away a Wukong or a Malphite for Alphari there?
Possibility. I would be very surprised to see the Sett come out. Not nearly picked as much in top lane these days, but it will be the Ornn for Jenax. So welcome home to the top lane, my friend. No longer is it spicy when you get to play a melee champion or a tank. It's just stock standard here.
It also does help with some of the engage tools that they're missing, and Sett is locked in. Jungle Sett?
Jungle Sett?
Jungle Ornn?
Jungle. We're going to have to wait and see, Froskurinn. That's a very surprising twist. We wanted SK Gaming to show us something. I didn't expect it to be something crazy in the big ban phase, but there it is.
And now what's it going to be for Alphari, saving him last pick? If it is a traditional tank matchup, across on that Ornn, he can maybe go for a bruiser, try to break it, but then eventually get outscaled. And it looks like that's what he's going to do.
Ooh, all right. Now, I am going to get my Aatrox in a Jenax game, but not in the hands of Jenax himself, Alphari. This is very much, Froskurinn, as you said, an Origen composition. We've got solid, reliable top laner, solid, reliable mid laner, solid, reliable AD carry, solid jungle. It just feels all around very solid, very safe. They've got some good wombo combo options. They've got good disengage overall. It feels quite flexible, whereas SK Gaming are throwing us some curveballs here in the draft.
And this is kind of what's to be expected from week one. I think the Analyst just talked about it earlier, that usually when you don't really know what's going to come out of your opponent, you don't have that much tape to go off of them, just scrims, and maybe these teams haven't faced each other in scrims at all. It's more about playing your game. It's not about countering what your opponent's going to go. It's going back to basics and making sure that you're comfortable.
But for now, Trick has busted out the Sett jungle before. According to Pro Builds, it was 1 month ago, and he played Phase Rush Sett jungle. So that's some old tech, but potentially some powerful tech. I believe there have been a few nerfs since then, but maybe he can show us something crazy today. Remember, the story for OG, this should be the split that they go to Worlds. Their eyes have always been set on that goal, but in order to do so, they have to continue, and they have to refine. and build on what they had last season. Whereas on the opposite side for SK, we want something. We want signs of life. We want a new identity. We want to know where SK stands after these changes.
Especially in a standout player like Crownshot. We already talked about how we wanted him to get the Ezreal. He's got it this time around. ZaZee making his debut across from Nukeduck from the comfort of his own home and bringing out the Azir. Feels like everything is aligned to allow these new SK players to have their moment and shine.
It's a good time to be a rookie. A lot of the pressure of stage removed, the audience not here screaming.
A lot of the variables removed.
Yeah. A lot more comfortable, a lot closer to scrims. You've been having a good performance there. It should be much easier to replicate that performance here on stage. Gearing up, we're getting ready for our third game of the day. And frankly, trying to figure out what exactly the game plan is here with this Sett jungle. What are they going to get done?
I mean, I feel like, so Trick to me, I'm always like team fight jungler, which usually when you say team fight jungler, it doesn't always mean the greatest thing, because jungler's responsibility.
It's like saying someone, like when someone asks you what are their redeeming characteristics and you say they're a really nice guy. You know what I mean? They're just really nice. Like, okay, but what are they good at? They're like, they're nice.
He's a nice guy.
He's a team fight jungler. It's like, well, what about all the jungling part of his role? You're like, well, he's a team fighter.
But Sett's ability to just kind of remove someone from a team fight, grab him, take him away, the fact that Upset on this Misfortune is going to have to kind of like plant his feet and really pick his moments. If Trick is able to find him and remove that kind of big damage source and just allow his Azir and Ezreal to take over a game that we've seen a lot of compositions do today. Vitality really showcased the power of that one. That said, Origen, they have so much experience with playing like these range-style compositions. Like this is a combination that Origen should be really comfortable playing around, because playing around range is usually something that they build into their comps. They're always about outranging opponents.
Should be solid. Of course, we are, it looks like, very delayed here getting into games. So we will be going over to Analyst desk shortly. Apologies to those of you watching at home. Take this as an opportunity to take a break. Hashtag KitKat. Hashtag sponsored. They didn't tell me to say that. I'm just really excited about KitKats. That's my note to the producer that I really want a KitKat. But no, take a bathroom break. Get ready. We are going to be getting into game 3 as quickly as possible. But of course, technical difficulties are bound to happen when we don't have everything here in-house at the start of Split. That's all I got for you. To start talking about anything.
Are we actually tossing, or is this staying?
No, it says we're waiting. They're just spooling up. They're getting ready. They were, they were sitting. They were chilling comfortably. And now we got to get them back on over to the desk.
Oh, okay. So we're filling for desk.
We're filling for desk. Yeah.
We're pulling back the curtain, actually revealing.
Yeah. So what you guys, you've seen, obviously, the giant plastic screen between me and Froskurinn. It's very odd, is what I would describe it as. I know it's the right choice. Obviously, you want to be as cautious as possible, and we're just very fortunate that even in this time that we can be in the studio. So it's, you got to take what precautions you can, but at the same time, the amount of times I've almost walked into this screen trying to get over to Froskurinn's side of the desk, because I like to be very central, like to hog the monitor, and that option has now been taken away from me, and I feel a little bit like an animal in a zoo where you watch me when I'm shouting, like, wow, look, it's a play-by-play caster in the wild. Look at him scream at the people pushing the buttons on the screen.
What's best to me is that I keep going over to look deep into your eyes as we normally do, but my reflection—
You just see your eyes.
Yeah, my reflection is in the screen, and then I get distracted fixing my hair. There's also the fact that it splits our monitor in half, so I actually feel like there may be a moment where you're only allowed to cast the left side of the monitor, and I get to cast the right side.
Could happen. Depends on how many of our games in Week 8 are for stakes and how many of them are for memes. But for now, we are going to send it back over to the Analyst desk. Once again, a reminder, we're just waiting on SK Gaming and Origen before we can get back into game. But until then, here is the desk.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we are into a little bit of a delay, but do not despair. We're going to dive into the draft and maybe some other things. Who knows how long we're going to be here? I certainly can't give you that. I can't give you an estimation.
Could be the draft, could be games. Who knows what could happen? We're about to find out.
All right, let's dive into the draft. One thing I want to touch on is what we talked about before, being ZaZee, the newest player on the SK roster, then going up against Nukeduck and OG, who are, of course, much more experienced. And if he would have room to kind of do his own thing, right?
Yeah.
When we look at the matchup, you'd say, well, yes, there's an Azir and Orianna. So how does that change your kind of projection of how this game could go?
Well, I think what's great is that we got exactly kind of what we were talking about, which is that, hey, if they get Azir Ezreal, maybe they stand a good chance. And what surprised me was the Origen have gone for a draft, which is very reminiscent of what we would typically see in spring.
Yep.
So you see the Nautilus high priority, you see the early priority on the Gragas, and the thing about these champions is they weren't nerfed. Right? A lot of these, well, MF did receive a small nerf, but a lot of these champions are still strong. It's just that other things, as a result of a variety of small changes that have happened over the large number of patches, have kind of risen in popularity, which is why we haven't seen Gragas as much, and we've seen alternatives. But I think that Gragas is still a very effective early game champion, and I think he scales very well, and I also think that it's something that Xerxe plays extremely well. And this is where my concern then comes in from ZaZee, because while he is playing something very safe in the form of Azir, Gragas plus Orianna as a combo is actually quite effective at setting up mid lane ganks, especially around level 6. It depends as to whether or not ZaZee chooses to run the cleanse, which he may do. He could choose to prioritize the teleport as well, but this is a matchup where he could struggle, given that Sett can't offer the same early pressure that someone like a Gragas can, unless you find a good opportunity to get that counter gank in.
So I think the only place that I would say that perhaps I disagree with you slightly, and I'm watching my words quite carefully here, is I think Sett ganking an Orianna early on is actually a lot easier than Gragas ganking an Azir, because all the Azir has to do, so bear out, because I could be wrong. I admit I could be wrong. But my thought is you take Predator, you run Knuckle down, and the Orianna tries to run away, but maybe has to burn the flash. Whereas if your Azir always holds onto the shifting sands, it's actually very easy for that Azir to escape the Gragas body slam, unless you body slam flash.
Yeah, but like, that's the thing, right? So in the context of Orianna versus Sett, there's a lot more agency for Orianna because she can slow Sett down, which means that if he flashes, even if he flashes, unless his E hits both the minion and the Orianna, he's not going to get stunned. And on top of that, Azir doesn't have as much follow-up, right?
But you can still land the Azir shuffle in and stun.
I mean, yes, but no, because you then need level 6 from the Azir, right?
Okay.
Whereas Gragas has setup without the level 6 from Orianna, and there's even more setup once she has the Orianna ult, plus Gragas body slam, plus Gragas level 6 as well.
Okay.
So I'm saying that in combination, in total, like it's not like Sett never has any options, right? You can still run in, especially if Orianna has no flash, you just like smash her in the face.
Mobility
yeah,
there,
exactly, right? But the thing is, because Sett doesn't have any innate dashes or abilities to avoid the giant slow that she can just put on her ground, it means that even though he runs forward, he also has to run into what is Orianna's ult and W. So it then inherently becomes harder.
I get that. I think there are possibilities, but I agree with you looking at it now that perhaps there are less possibilities for the Sett than there are for the Gragas.
I'm also going off. Everyone plays perfect, then this or
100%.
this
Yeah,
happens,
that's also
which
true.
could all fall to the wayside. What do we make of the Sett jungle overall? It has been kind of a musical chairs with Sett in SK to start now in the jungle for Trick. What are going to be his priorities in the early game? Just at mid lane?
Well, when I look at how a lot of these waves set up, I think the Origen has push and bot side. I think that Orianna versus Azir is a bit of a skill-based matchup where Orianna will lose the push very early on, but the moment she starts getting points in her W and can clear faster, she has a little bit more power. But then top lane should also be Alphari favored with the Aatrox. So I think the Origen have pushing top, pushing bot at the very least, which makes it very easy for Xerxe to play around either of these pushing lanes if he wants to, which is the concern for SK, because I don't think Trick can do a lot to be able to help facilitate, get SK out of these what could be potentially very difficult early lane matchups.
Actually, the more I look at it, the more I think Sett is going to struggle to find ganks in these lanes. Because as you say, pushing is pushing, right? And that's great for Origen, and it means that Xerxe is in a good position. But trying to get into that bottom lane versus a Riptide, a Make It Rain, you're getting slowed as soon as you try and get anywhere near that lane. Nautilus can hook himself away. You've got Struck for MF. She can run away as well. Top lane,
Top
Alphari.
is an option.
Top is an option, but then you have to work your way through Infernal Chains. Assuming Alphari holds onto it, Sett has to then dodge out to the side, and that reduces his ability to close the gap.
Also, if you're confused, it is, of course, Destiny. That is laning with Upset and not Nukes.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's like a
even
flash
noticed
change.
that.
Imagine if we had those, like, just people could swap generally if they're...
Yeah. So I agree that top is the only option, really. Sorry for Trick, just to go back to that. But even then, Alphari has his dash to get away, and you need layered CC for the Sett.
The thing about Sett is he's just not a good early game jungler, right? That's not his responsibility. He offers more value later into the game, which is why Origen inherently have more agency over the early game, which is great for Origen, especially if you're the better team that when it comes to experience and being able to move around
You
the
don't
map.
even need to make that caveat.
Right? But it's more because
they should be the better team.
well, the expectation that we set was if the game is moving slow and both teams are scaling at the same pace, and that's when SK have the best opportunity to win, right?
Yeah.
The problem that they now have is that even if Origen, even if they play a slow game, right? The reality is they have agency in the early game, which means they get to decide which lanes they play around. They get to move first, and they get to make a lot of the decisions, which means they just set themselves up for success in the early game, which is not what a team like SK wants, which is the biggest concern, and which is why I'm not really a fan of this set pick.
I see. It's also like an OG comp, right?
Yeah.
When we look
It's
at the
very
picks
OG,
across the board. So let's see how they come out. I do have a little update for you all. Loading onto the Rift, one of SK's players couldn't connect to the game. We're currently restarting the lobby, and once that's completed, we'll be remaking Champion Select, but with the same picks and bans. So I don't think we're going to be seeing those. I'm not sure. We'll get an update there. As a reminder, the players are, of course, playing at home where everything is being monitored. So we just want to make sure that everything is in order. So if we walk away from this game specifically and kind of the picks and bans, because we don't know how the early game is going to go, and we've set out what we think will happen, let's again look at kind of the bigger picture for both of these teams. We said already for Origen, woulda, coulda, shoulda for a long time now, right? And we said they need to make a statement in this first game to be good. But when you look at their long-term development, what are some things that you take from Spring that you want to see done better or different from Origen in this summer split?
Well, I think
it's a hard one. I'm putting
it's
you on the
difficult,
spot, I know,
because when you speak to Origen, their perspective a lot of the time was, why do we need to close the game out faster when we could just take our time and increase the chances of fewer mistakes happening, right? Which is logic that you can't really fault. You know, the only people that are complaining are the people watching saying like, oh, you could close fast. It'd be like, yeah, so all they care about is the win.
Yeah.
Like, if they win a world final that way, then like, you're really going to complain about it still? And I think that...
Yes, the answer is yes.
But I think that what Origen have... What I think the biggest problem for Origen was in last split was that Nukeduck was not having the same impact that he historically has. I felt like he was very underwhelming. I felt like that his synergy with Xerxe was very weak, and that as a result of that, one of their biggest failings as a team was that their mid-jungle duo didn't have the same impact relative to self-made Nemesis on top of Jankos perks from last split. And I think that that hindered them, and it especially when you compare it to someone like Shadow and Humanoid from Mad Lions, who really worked extremely well together. That was probably the biggest disconnect for me, where I found a lot of problems. And part of it was because I felt like Nukeduck was playing a lot of champions that was just very much, I'm just going to fill the role that my team needs, which is a great thing to have from a mid laner, but not always about getting agency, because then it becomes a lot more about your top lane or your AD carry. But we know Nukeduck has the ability to carry games like this, and now that he's playing a champion like Orianna, no, he's not going to roam a lot more. No, are we going to see him like snowball out of control? No, but the meta is less about the mid-jungle duo, I feel, which will either solve the problem that I think they had last split inadvertently, just because the meta doesn't force them to play like that, or it can either strengthen it if they decide to find a way to try and play through him when they don't necessarily need to, because he's on a champion like Orianna. So I think the meta shifts will favor Origen, but at the end of the day, if the meta then flips again, does that problem still exist? And what does Nukeduck look like coming into this split?
So I think that we should go back to the point you raised right at the start of that, which is the discussion of why should we end the game quickly if we can win and make sure we win slower, right? You take the 90-10 over the 60-40 every time, right? And that's always been Origen's mentality. However, thinking about it, all you do by prolonging the game is perhaps increase your odds of winning, but also increase your own odds of making a mistake or the enemy team outplaying.
But the thing about that logic is the only time Origen would ever do that is if they have the better scaling comp anyway.
But so I understand where you're coming from, and I agree that it works against 90% of teams.
Yeah.
But the issue that I have with that strategy generally is if you play a Fnatic or a G2 who have shown that they can mechanically outplay you in moments, Fnatic and G2 will deliberately take fights in that extended time you're giving them.
But this is then where we see the adaptation and evolution of Origen in playoffs, where they were a lot more skirmish heavy and they were a lot more aggressive.
And that's what I want to see more this season.
But I can't ask for that more of that if the meta doesn't demand of it, is kind of my perspective on it. Because while I think G2 showcased earlier in the day that you can still play these games very fast, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's optimal right now. That's just how G2 approaches the game, and you can't for sure say that G2's approach to the game is always the best one, because it's G2 esports. They're a bit of an enigma when it comes to the meta.
I agree that, like, if the optimal strategy is perhaps not to do that, then requesting it for the sake of that being your strategy is incorrect, right? It's inefficient to play against the optimal strategy in League of Legends. However, against teams like SK, I could say, hey, you guys should beat these guys 9 times out of 10. Why not give me a little bit more inventiveness in the early game? Give me a little bit more of that aggression against a team you should be able to beat, and then you can at least practice it in case the meta shifts in the future.
But I would also be careful about saying about like their impact in the early game, because I never thought that their early game was really the issue. It largely came from mid-game decision-making and how they ended games.
Okay.
The decisions between... so one of my biggest issues with Origen was how they actually used Baron. When I was doing VoD reviewing coming into playoffs and during playoffs, when they had Baron, they actually struggled to properly align their waves up when it came to sieging. So teams could stall them out because they could not properly siege onto enemy bases just because they weren't aligning their minion waves properly, right? And that's just a mistake that we saw quite a few times from them that they then did fix when you got up to the likes of playing against G2, but it's things like this that when you forget these kind of things, it's easier to stall the game out as well. So I think that investing in deep vision, properly setting up for your Baron, making the correct decision around when you can do Baron, were all things that we saw evolutions of when they played up against the likes of G2 and Fnatic in playoffs. So I guess I would say that if I wanted to see more of anything, it's like cleaner decisions when it comes to the mid game and having more confidence to properly execute.
So like any team in the world.
Yeah, we got there in the end. We got there in the end.
Yeah, no, just a couple more minutes. It is an interesting kind of theoretical discussion, because everything you just named, you think, well, isn't that kind of the basics? Isn't the playing around Baron and the wave control and timings in games? But it's not as easy as that. You do need a lot of synergy with your team to always get that right. And not only get that right in the specific scenarios you've practiced or you've played, but also when you're thrown a curveball from the enemy team and from the game. And I also think it's quite an interesting discussion, this whole, well, they have this style, so why do you do different? You could say, the strength of really good teams lies in that they are not bound to one style and that they are able to go in that toolbox and try different things. And they have that innate ability. We don't see it all the time.
The argument would then be, is the strength of different styles your ability to play through different players or just playing different styles?
Yeah.
Because my argument would be one of the biggest strengths of a G2, a Fnatic, is that you can expect any lane to carry. They'll carry in different ways, and the styles in which they approach the game will often be different. Like, I'm not going to expect Nemesis to carry on Zed, but I can expect him to carry on a Veigar, and a Veigar comp is very different from a Zed comp, right? Whereas when you look at a G2, you expect them all to kind of dominate their lanes, and if it's a Wonder comp, well, hey, we're hard committing into a split per start or whatever it is. And I think that when you look at Origen, when they found a lot of success, it was by playing split pushing, which is then kind of where it comes back to Nukeduck. Because to me, it felt like in spring, they tunneled a lot on this 1-4 style, when Nukeduck was sacrificing a lot of farm and just constantly grouping up with his team, while Alphari was left on a side lane to solo carry. And then when we saw them last year, it was the Nukeduck Alphari show where they punished side lanes so well that they managed to make it all the way to the final against G2. So I think that what I want to see is a return to form to Nukeduck so that he can be another player that they can look to carry through and have him as a reliable means of finding success, on top of also having your other styles through Upset and Alphari, which I think they've already...
When you put it like that, it's like all the building blocks for now, maybe now finally coming together. So I'm pretty hyped about this lineup.
The only concern I have is we've said that a few times, right?
Yeah,
like we've said we want Nukeduck to step up. We've said we want Alphari to step up, and it feels like every now and again they fire on like 3 of their 4 cylinders. Like 3 players are playing really well, but perhaps Nukeduck is failing. And I want to come back to the adaptability thing, because we did get the chance to play with Upset quite a lot in the mid-season streamathon, and that guy is so intelligent about how he changes his decision-making based on the portion of the game, right? Like, he would predict our next 3 waves of each lane and be like, Vedi, you can't go up there because in 4 minutes time, you're going to be needed bot lane. And it's just, these guys are very intelligent and very adaptable. It's just we haven't quite seen Origen as a cohesive unit be able to change things on the fly.
If you have a final counterpoint, or don't you?
I've been told to shut up.
Oh, I didn't have you. I was looking forward of being the teacher with the ruler to tell you that it was all over. But great insight, by the way, just off the cuff about Origen. And hopefully now we can get back in the game. SK versus OG. Let's go.
All right. Thank you very much for that insight.
Vedius, shut up.
And of course, Frosk for telling Vedius to shut up personally. It was a sprint for you to get back here after telling him to shut up, but you did it very effectively via some vulgar hand gestures in the background of that segment. But it made it clear what needed to happen for us to get back into game.
Yeah, and you and I, during this, have just been full investigative journalism about Sett.
Sett jungle. Yeah.
Sett jungle. I suspect that he's probably going to go a more tank-oriented build, so probably Cinderhulk into the Dead Man's Plate. Obviously, the Dead Man's Plate movement speed on top of the Q movement speed, and then just like run in and grab someone. Obviously, he can go a more carry-oriented role, so we'll keep our eyes on Trick to see how frisky he's feeling. He's like, it's gonna be Blade of the Rune King. This is gonna be me, or if he is going to go that true tank. I almost think it's like a budget Skarner. Like,
budget, yeah.
He just grabs people. He sprints at
Sexy
them.
budget Skarner. Is that what we're going to see today? It is time. The wait is over. It is SK versus Origen. DJ, play that voice clip thing where she goes, aha!
We made it. We are on the rift and already out the gate. Something sneaky is afoot.
Yes. You know, I love cheese. I love cheese in League of Legends more than anything because it's how I win the only games that I win in League of Legends. But sadly, this cheese for SK will not pay off. They were hoping to catch him sleeping. Does not work, but a good first look from SK, just trying to get something right out the gate.
Actually using a really deep ward. So Limit ran into that brush, has placed it down, and then changed for a sweeper.
Yeah.
Which isn't entirely uncommon, but obviously something has been happening for him to acquire vision that deep down the lane to keep track of where Destiny and Upset are, as maybe it's this.
Ooh, I figured it out, Froskurinn, bear with me. Here's my 5-head analysis for you. Okay, so Trick is starting on the top side. He's going to jungle to the bottom lane.
They're going to clear the bush and set up a gank.
They're going to clear the bush and they're going to set up a gank. And so why I like this, despite the fact that if it's that obvious, it's maybe a little predictable, is because SK is a very, let's call them a new team, all things considered, with their solo laners put in. I like seeing a lot of, no pun intended, set plays.
Well, they've already gotten their cheeky little first shot fired as Limit and Crownshot slapped Destiny there, and now they're contesting the wave.
Destiny going to go for it. Is going to get hooked there, lose out on that Aftershock bonus, and take an extra auto attack on the way out. So very good start for SK. Of course, Ezreal notoriously strong in early levels before either champion has the opportunity to go for a first back, before Ezreal's essentially forced to buy mana and not flat AD.
Yeah, and we've heard it all the time that Nautilus is often seen as a pick into Thresh because of the animation speed on his Q versus Thresh death sentence. As he winds up, Nautilus can just snap grab him, but in that exchange in particular, Limit actually used the Q after Destiny to pull him back. And like you said, the Aftershock went down, and now they're just continuing to tag as they need to get this wave to crash.
I haven't seen the sweeper used either quite yet, but they can use it to set up Confident Vision as Trick moves down to the bottom side of the map. Of course, Trick can just go back, can reset, can go elsewhere. Once again, you call him the teamfight jungler. We don't really know Trick to be the hyper-aggressive early-game jungler. If you think back to his spring performance on Lee Sin, we were stunned to see it, and it worked out kind of as expected. It was not effective for him. The Karthus that we saw from him, I believe, looked a little bit better, more farming, more, as I said, teamfight-oriented. So we have to see where the Sett fits into the Trick puzzle.
Yeah, and maybe there was a moment there where SK Limit and Crownshot were trying to get an early bounce and maybe get the wave a little bit closer to the tower to, as you were calling, set Trick up for an early gank onto the bot lane. But because it kind of got held in front of their tower, it's not quite there. So Trick uses his sweeper, moves through, makes sure that he's not walking through a ward on Try or River Brush, and then walks onto Scuttle. But he might be spotted by, I believe it's Nukeduck's ward or Xerxe's ward sitting in Pixel Brush.
Good aggressive move there, coming in from Crownshot.
Okay, this is actually really big. Sett is exceptionally good at diving because of his W giving him the shield. And there's already a big wave being stacked out by Crownshot and Limit. A level 3 dive is a classic when you have a Sett.
And Upset just leaves. He just walks away. He knows if he doesn't sit under that tower, it's unreliable for Sett to flash on him because there is no follow-up. So he does just walk away. So while the setup there from SK was solid, and it will earn them a tower plate, they kind of avoid disaster because OG are smart enough to just leave.
Yeah, and you are starting to see a CS discrepancy open up a little bit, but already you see the pings from Origen. They've got deep vision in on Trick's jungle. They know exactly where he's going to be pathing. And when you give that information over to a jungler like Xerxe, what does it mean when he now kind of gets the next 1 minute to a minute and a half of just knowing exactly where you are and what he's going to do with the information.
Yeah, of course, thank you to the observers for highlighting a lot of that vision you talked about. The ability to track Trick is going to be even easier now with that ward in place as well. And of course, Xerxe now back and getting the Predator boots means it's that much easier for him to set up plays. But Froskurinn, you talk about CS discrepancy on the bottom side. Upset doing his best to even that out. But on the top side of the map, we're starting to see Aatrox Ornn matchup going as expected. It's been a while since we've seen this one, obviously, but the Aatrox clearly pulling ahead. Very easy for him to have control of this lane.
Yeah. Do want to point out, though, that Trick has been spotted. He cleared out the ward. Gragas is now going to step in, probably grab some vision onto the bottom side of the jungle since he knows that it's safe. Worst case scenario is he walks into the enemy support. And then as Upset is going to now use Misfortune's movement speed to shove the wave and then walk back into the lane and really not miss anything. They can start to contest for bottom river control, Origen, and try to secure this dragon.
And I like the itemization choice coming in here from Upset, and that we really get to see double Dorans really trying to capitalize on that early game, get a bigger advantage. I think probably expecting Ezreal to go for the tier here, but does go for the pickaxe. And as you said, Froskurinn, got a lot of players coming into mid lane. Looks like they're trying to give ZaZee that warm LEC welcome, but gonna have to clear out the vision first.
Also checking to see if they can find Limit. Really good coordination from Origen right there to have multiple members if they did find Thresh. You know, you have the engage from the Nautilus, you've got the follow-up from Misfortune and Gragas behind, so it's basic, but it was clean.
Yeah.
As round 2, is it gonna be the Lantern?
It's a classic Flash Flay Lantern gank.
He's gonna set it up. So obviously you want Flay into Facebreaker.
Yeah, essentially the double Flay. But of course, difficult to pull off. Upset, very easy for him to walk out or cleanse Flash out, and Destiny can input buffer the Nautilus hook. If it is in air as he gets pulled back by CC and then hits a wall, he will get pulled through despite the fact that he has already been locked up. So difficult to play around that one, so instead the name of the game is going to be taking these Drakes for the side of SK.
And both teams are really just playing for waves right now. SK, when they were threatening the initial dive bottom, now playing off of the mid lane priority wave. Origen, when they initially peeked in onto this lower river with the dragon because they had the wave control of bottom. Here's the skirmish.
Push. Now leaping forward, they're going to try to shut down Xerxe, but OG has a lot of members here in the area. ZaZee now coming in, but he's not too strong. Crownshot now in OG territory. One more Mystic Shot. Should be able to find him the kill. He's going to get first blood now coming in. This order to the backside. This is massive now for SK. They're turning this fight. Alphari wants to fire it back. But Shrek now coming in. Gonna take him down. That's the hook. How far is he gonna go out of this one? A big dunk, and he's gonna manage to get a kill on Trick. That's gonna reset on the ultimate. Now he's on the chase. Infernal Chains. Where is it going to go? How long is that cooldown? Nukeduck can't speed him up. Jenax gonna give his life for this one. Buy space for the rest of the team to make it out, or is he? Limit with an excellent Lantern to ferry him to safety, and Destiny will walk away empty-handed. Takes a death sentence to the face, but a good trade for SK.
But while it is 2 for 2 and the dragon picked up for SK, check out what's happening now after the reset. Upset is already moving towards the top side of the map. Ezreal, slow. Crownshot was actually walking towards bottom, is going to be late to this play, and it's not necessarily just for Herald, it's just to get that tempo advantage back on the map. Is I want to see what happens to Upset here, because he has Flash, and I didn't quite see what happened to him on the bottom of the fight. Shout out to Crownshot, really nice Flash. Okay, just CC locked.
Yeah. That was a lot of flashes. We had a flash from Ezreal, a flash from Thresh, and it looks like in the end there, a flash from Azir. A lot of things burned to shut down Upset. Alphari was praying for the cleanup, but sadly not quite fast enough to chase down all these members of SK. And heads up use of the Thresh Lantern, as well as the Ornn's unstoppable effect there on the Bella's Breath to just walk that one out.
And again, we've now set up our lanes. Upset was trying to get the cheeky tempo advantage, swapping their lanes faster, hoping to get him over to that level 6, as now Xerxe is also sitting with his own 6.
Cast, excellent cast, just throws it out with the Lantern. Gonna deny that one.
Really nicely done. Maybe there's potential that you're able to lock him down if Destiny's able to find the Q into the auto attack.
And to be fair, Crownshot, if he's quick enough on the trigger there, there's still the raw cask is not ideal. Does connect the skill shot, but doesn't work out. Destiny now pulled back. It's a little overstayed his welcome. And Trick now going in, but he's getting shredded through. Haymaker does mean that Destiny gets taken down. Trick now walking to the bush. He's on a sliver of life, but Upset's just gonna have to walk away from this one. And this is a miracle from SK. I cannot believe that Trick got out of there with his life intact.
It's always that thing with Sett. He's such a clinched champion because you see the low health bar and then boom, that shield comes out. that damage, the fadeaway.
I think it's so rough to play against, because if you're not familiar with Sett, it's so misleading, because you're like, oh, I'm going to kill him. He's got 100 health. But yeah, but he's also got 1,000,000 health regen right now, because he's only got 100 health left. So you really got to one-shot that guy once that shield is gone.
And as we are starting to take stock about where kind of all of this gold is falling, it's right into the pocket of the carries for SK here. ZaZee and Ezreal being the primary beneficiaries of picking up those kills, where it has not gone the same way for Origen.
Absolutely has not. Good news is, kind of as expected from Alphari, he continues to build this monstrous lead, and it's of course not just the matchup, but the man playing it. Alphari, an absolute menace in terms of individual solo laning prowess. He's just about second to none. And so, going to be difficult as he continues to get stronger and stronger. And now, Limit going to be in trouble. Buck's coming in, Crownshot ready to go over the wall. Limit with no flash available quite yet. Tries to buy a bit more time with the stopwatch. Xerxe can fall up and go over the wall here, but it's just going to be the reset. So while Limit does have to give up the stopwatch, he gets what he wanted, which is stopping the Herald from going down.
Really weird desync, however, from SK there, which makes sense. New roster still trying to build up the synergy. Trick was bottom side of the map when Limit decided to face check blind into River. Just needs to wait for ZaZee to get the control that he was going to have with his push priority. He was first to rotate, which is why Origen very quickly took their hands off that Herald, and now this is how this is supposed to go. Trick has moved up into top River, ZaZee continuing to play pressure point, Nukeduck stuck under his tower on the Orianna, and it's now going to be a free Herald.
And I think Froskurinn, we set a lot of expectations for this game as we had an abundance of time to do so. And the thing that we wanted to see was clean control from OG, giving up nothing. I don't feel like we've gotten that yet. And the other thing we wanted to see was signs of life from SK. So I think OG have, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, let us down a little bit here in this early game, whereas SK, I think, have shown us a decent amount.
Are you willing to kill a team at 11 minutes? It's Origen, at least give them 30.
No. I'm not saying for sure. Do I still think that OG are favored to win this game? Yes, but that's because of the nameplates, not because of the scorecard. And I think that's a big deal.
I will agree with that. I think SK, it's been a little bit rough in certain situations, but I've already liked what I've seen. They have survived the lane phase. That's more than they could say about majority of their games of spring.
That said, Alphari obviously just continues to be a thorn in the side of SK. As Jenax, bless his heart, he's holding on, but the Aatrox is only going to get scarier once he finishes some of those items. We'll have to see what Alphari gets when he backs. And of course, later today, Kabe returns to the LEC. It's Misfits Gaming and Fnatic go toe-to-toe in Game 5. We're currently in Game 3. Just got one more in between before you can watch that spectacular showdown between Swedish and Danish AD carries.
And we got the chance to talk to Kabe on Euphoria. He basically hit the ground running, landed right back in Europe, got rid of the jet lag. He has been grinding it out, and he is ready to showcase his talent back on the European stage as a top side gank, potentially here.
And in a pool of talented AD carries, it's going to be a big deal. So we see Crownshot pushing into the top side, upset left to farm, and Alphari now the one in trouble. I like the focus coming in here from SK. Limit will land the hook, but Trick does not want to commit. They're going to be breaking this one down. Herald used a little bit early, but they are still going to be able to grab this tower. It is going to take a frustratingly long amount of time, however, as there's just so much additional armor and magic resist on that tower at this point.
How are you feeling about the Sett right now, Drakos? Because we're having this conversation about how Sett has kind of been playing musical chairs. That he's appearing in the support role, he's now appearing in the jungle position. And I feel like when a champion is able to be that versatile and that flexible, it tells you something about his kit.
Yeah, I think we can safely agree that Sett's kit is a little bit nutso, because he's a Darius, he's a Mordekaiser, he's a Garen, right? He's a Juggernaut, right? That's the class that he fits into. But this new era of Juggernauts, i.e. the Mordekaisers and the Setts, have one thing that sets them apart, and that is absolutely nutso bonkers ults. Because Darius's ult is super self-indulgent, it's useless for the team, it's only good if Darius is good. Garen's ult is the same thing, but Sett, his ultimate is so freaking powerful. It's a similar story from Mordekaiser we saw in our first game, that if you can put him anywhere and get away with an early game where he's maybe not that powerful, the ult pays off so much that it's worth it.
And I also like the fact that by putting him in jungle roles, like, it's not my favorite. I'm not coming out in full support of the Sett jungle.
Can I just say, I think our tier list is support followed by top lane, and then a distant third is jungle Sett.
But I do like that they are kind of hiding him by putting him in roles like the support from maybe some of the 1v1 matchups that can cause him some issues.
Yeah. Yeah, just obviously it's a champion that's been taken down a notch a lot in terms of raw numbers after his success in pro play. So I like what we're seeing from Trick here so far. It's looked really solid, a lot of free stats, a lot of free tankiness, and he hasn't been punished by the lack of mobility that generally is the big bane of Sett in a lot of these situations. That said, we are now seeing the Black Cleaver come in, so Alphari's got a nice 30% CDR. That's going to be huge. It's going to make this lane even more uncomfortable for Ornn, who's forced into a bit of an awkward situation. Bits and pieces, hasn't been able to finish the Sunfire Cape, and obviously desperately wants that Catalyst just to stay healthy in lane. So top lane remains a difficult point on the map, whereas everywhere else is close to even.
We are seeing a bit of a setup gank here, though, as Xerxe slipping in behind Destiny and Upset. Snagged.
Okay. Cannot interrupt that Ezreal ult, of course, but the cast now coming out. And Crownshot just going to E out to safety. A bit of a comedy of errors there. And now Trick is on the way in, but he's just going to protect. A lot of resources burned from the side of OG. Good news is they got double summoner spells. What did they give up? Double summoner spells, but they held on to Upset's flash. They only gave up Destiny's flash. So in the end, I think still a positive trade for OG, just definitely not the result that they wanted.
I mean, Crownshot quick on the finger right there to immediately flash away. Back into safety, got on the other side of the cask that helped propel him there. That said, you know, missing flash on Ezreal doesn't really mean anything.
When you get one for free that also does damage every, what, 20 seconds? It's a long cooldown of base these days in the early game, but as you put more points into it, it should be fine. Now the question is, Frost, we were wondering about itemization for Sett. We've seen Cinderhulk is obviously the standard.
Can I just...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Can I name this the race car build?
It's going to be the race car build. We've got the Swifties. We're working on the Dead Man's Plate. We will potentially also get the other Go Fast item, which is names I have forgot. It's Righteous Glory. Righteous Glory, that's it. I do this for a living, for sure.
The movement speed off of his Q. He's got phase rush. He's zipping.
He's wishing he had that Yuumi from the Vitality game, so he could just really just run face first into the back line.
And obviously when you're against a champion like Misfortune, that can be really painful. She has to plant her feet and make that ultimate count. The thing is when I play Misfortune, people tell me that she's got like long range because technically off the double up, you can like bounce it, you get like good angles. I don't feel that way. I'm like, this feels very short range comparatively to other ADCs.
Yeah, long range when we handshake on the fact that we're both here to farm minions and not kill each other. For sure, for sure, for sure.
Drakos, we're trying to distract from this.
Yeah.
Listen, it's gonna be Farmville. We're waiting for Drake. That's fine.
Yeah, and that is fine. I love the idea. This is like, in League of Legends, I feel like there's so many champions and so many situations where you're mobility checked, and it's about like, how many dashes do you have? You know, is your flash up? Blah, 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 blah. But for MF versus race car Sett, it's how much raw movement speed can you get? Can you outrun each other?
How much does he want to make Upset just rage? You don't get to play the game.
The question also is if Upset is good enough at just orb walking his way out of that one, does he just die before he even gets there? That's going to be tough. Maybe he gets to proc phase rush on Destiny on the way. Limit though, fishing for the hook, and Nukeduck just going to sidestep now, trying to get a kill of his own. A lot of damage coming in from Nukeduck, but he's going to get swooped back. My God, scooped up. And if we are a Limit fan, we're going to call that baited and outsmarted. I'm going to say a bit over-aggressive from Nukeduck, however, is SK going to grab another Herald and kill the OG mid lane.
I'm sure we're going to get a look at it in the replay. That felt like it was on the pixel. Like, Nukeduck had flash and he held it because I think he was thinking, I'm going to sidestep this.
Does not pan out, though. And now we get... I think, yeah, they don't have enough resources here. This should be broken down mid lane tier 1. I can't imagine the Herald will get another charge, especially as Xerxe has Smite up, but it does now set up for easy access to Ocean. At this stage, however, maybe more likely that SK go for the reset, but with OG already backing on the bottom side of the map, it's free access to this dragon, the second dragon of the game for SK, and another game where we have Ocean Soul potentially going to a team with an Ezreal on it.
Taking a look at the replay, let's see how close this one was. Nukeduck, I actually really like it. You know, catches him over the wall, dodges the death sentence, hits him with the frozen hose, and how close is this Azir to not hitting him?
Swoop.
It was right there.
That's a big shield, dude. There's a lot of soldiers there. I don't know. I think that was overconfidence.
I mean, clearly
again,
the guy who died messed up. Like, no one's debating that. I'm debating how close was it?
How close? Yeah, that's the better debate. Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna be hard pressed to be convinced that I could win the argument of who knows the hitbox size is better, me or the guy who's played this matchup hundreds of times over the almost 10 years now that he's been playing League of Legends. Not a mid laner, and I would have definitely flashed that, which made me right in that one chance. But
well, maybe Nukeduck should have flashed it too.
Maybe Nukeduck should have flashed it too. But I respect that he's going for the flashy plays. He obviously looks like a hero if he pulls that one off. For now, though, we've got the kill squad. OG target in their sights. It's the Raptors. Why would I expect anything different?
It's the support. They're waiting for him to walk in, looking for a ward because they've made the jungle
I
very
really
dark.
love the narrative that they're just after the jungle camps. Like, there they are.
Straight ahead.
Straight ahead. Look at them. They don't suspect a single thing.
I really would like.
Surprise! Sorry.
No, it's clever girl, if anything. It's a raptor camp. Come on.
There you go.
A safari Gragas skin.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Why don't we have more safari jungle skins?
That's a great question. That's where they're most appropriate, and like the ones that are most iconic are very limited.
Oh well. We are. No, you go. It's your job.
I was gonna say maybe it's because poaching isn't cool and we don't want to promote most of the things implied by the Safari skin line.
That's not your job. You're supposed to read the scoreboard and reset its expectations.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's 1952 and counting. About to hit 20-minute mark. A pivotal point in the game, no doubt, as SK will retreat. Once again, a heroic lantern from SK Limit.
They didn't just get that.
Safety.
They got the Alphari teleport, Drakos.
They also got the Alphari teleport. You can fill that in without making it like
Look at how
Drakos,
many-
you messed up. The mini map is on your side of the screen, Froskurinn.
Look at how many resources Origen just committed bot lane to just get destroyed by a dark passage. And now Limit grabbing Xerxe.
Xerxe up, but there it is. Gonna buy a bit of time with the stopwatch, but now it's trickle the backside. Duncan Upset right back down. Now Upset immediately gonna fun flash out to safety, or just flash. Destiny gonna get locked down, but Alphari wreaking havoc in the backline, and you cannot stop this Aatrox. Crownshot trying to get something done, but there's so much healing and the reset coming through. And, well, I was gonna say the macro check, it felt like SK were coming out on top, but the skill check, Alphari is here all day, taking names left and right, and now SK gotta run for the hills, because Jenax is gonna get stopped up, the hose connects, and now Crownshot firing some damage, laying it down, the Qs are connecting, Trick gonna come over the wall, ooh, Upset tries to fire back with an ult of his own, but SK will walk away, and good on Crownshot, they turned that fight around quite nicely.
Back and forth fight. The big thing for me, though, is the fact that Upset had to expend his flash right there. It won't be up and available for the next fight, which means that Trick should be much more successful. And even though the Misfortune ultimate wasn't the greatest in the end, Upset held it for a really long time over the course of the fight. He's probably not going to get another chance in the next fight. The idea is you snag him, you grab him, you delete him before the Misfortune ult even gets to make an impact.
Very difficult to deal with. And Crownshot just continues to look very menacing in these fights. And of course, he's relative to a Misfortune at one of the strongest points in the game for him. The two items now coming through. Tons of CDR as well. More than enough to just rain Qs from afar. And while Alphari is terrifying, 2 items, 300, 158 to 230. I cannot stress again how big of a difference that is between the top laners. It's looking like it might not be enough, as there are so many tools to keep Crownshot safe here and just throwing out damage.
I mean, I think there was an issue that Origen really committed on that bot lane play, and then it kind of worked out for them, and that SK took the fight anyway into the mid lane. But I feel like Origen have so many tools between a Misfortune ultimate, between an Orianna wave clear, that they can actually just play for Alphari being really strong in kind of these isolated duels and skirmishes on the side of the map, rather than trying to chase SK around and deal with, you know, the Dark Passage, the Azir push, the Ezreal mobility.
And I gotta say, I love Crownshot's Ezreal. I loved it back in the day because it built Gunblade, but this is obviously the very popular build these days. People love Bodurk and Death Stance, and I like that we're seeing immediate and very early Grievous wounds coming out from the Educator, because he knows Alphari is the big threat. And on top of that, building towards that Death Stance, getting that sustain, getting a little bit of those extra tanky stats, because he knows his role in the fight. He has the front line. He just needs to survive.
And we're seeing a lot of teams in the LEC in the kind of the first, I'm going to say 2 big games that Ezreal has come out, really struggling to deal with an Ezreal, to get onto the back line. Over in the LPL, they've actually been using Kai'Sa and Dive Threat, but I'll hold it, because here comes the TP and the Ornn.
Jenax trying to set up, making sure that he can connect with his ultimate. He's going to hit on to 2. Multiple members now locked down. Limit once again setting up the Lantern to pull him back out to safety. Teamfight resets, and they don't get a lot out of the Ornn, but now ZaZee's been caught out. He doesn't have a stopwatch anymore. They're trying to get the fight kicked off, but Trick's in the midst of everything, and he is going to be able to take out the Dragon. Alphari's in the back line. He's doing so much damage, but it might not be enough. Crownshot trying to find a way and trying to find access there, but Upset manages to, quite frankly, strut his way out of that one. Could have been disaster, but at the end of the day, SK walk out with the Dragon, and that's what it's all about.
And shout out to Limit right now. That was some clean Thresh play there for that team fight, and SK they're starting to get the better of Origen.
And I'm starting to wonder, like, we look at what was traded here in the draft, right? the Ezreal's telegraph. They ban the Yuumi, they say, hey, pick it anyway. They do, they pick it anyway. And then they also get the Thresh. And then they also get the Azir. And we look at what we traded, and we have consistent, reliable picks from the side of OG, but I don't feel like we have the meta powerhouses on their side of the map.
So as I was saying kind of before the big fight, in the LPL, when an Ezreal goes through, LPL teams are stacking dive. They're grabbing things like a Kai'Sa, because basically Ezreal presses R and the Kai'Sa presses R and then she kills him. Also got some buffs of herself. They grab things like a Nocturne. And it feels like Origen are starting to run into this problem where they don't have any tools. They can send Alphari back there. But like you said, with Crownshot's itemization and all of the tools in front of him, he's able to just kind of dance around him and no one can kill this guy.
Yeah. And the disengage tools between having a Thresh, an Azir ult, which for now can be used for the Ezreal, and obviously later in the game can just be used for ZaZee as a lethal damage threat of his own. There's just, you have 3 incredibly good champions at disengaging a champion like Aatrox. Aatrox is not a Nocturne. It is not a Kai'Sa. You don't leap onto them. You walk at them. Very easy to peel that back when you essentially have 2 flays between the Thresh and the Sett.
Maybe feels like some of Origen's other issues are starting to raise their head, and they were criticized a bit for some of their slow drafting, slow reaction to things. This is a very spring Origen comp.
It's true. And the thing about spring Origen was, remember, they hit the ground running with things like Xerxe and with things like the Gragas. And we're seeing the Gragas again here, and it's hard to doubt it when you see it in Champ Select because of how well it's worked for them in the past, especially as mentioned, start of spring. But now here, it's starting to look a lot more like a weakness. It does not look like they're ahead of the meta this time around, but maybe behind the take instead. And that's definitely not where you want to be in a game or in a super week where you're playing 3 games and 1/6 of your total season here for Origen.
It's not over, however, as we kind of enter a mid-game lull state. You can see that Origen are trying to find anyone, ZaZee, but it's super easy for Azir to play side lanes with that shifting sands, as well as having access to his TP.
Yeah, we talk about this too a lot because when people think of side lane champions, they don't necessarily think of Azir, but when your opponent champion is Orianna, you're the superior side laner. You've got more tools to get in and get out of fights. Of course, against a Zed, against a Fiora, whatever. You know, Kassadin, obviously not. It's definitely not the situation that you want to be in. But in this context, Azir's excellent. There's not really anyone who can reliably lock him down and take him out of this side lane.
Which is why I like to see how much blind pick Azir that we really have seen already this day. And we already know that Azir is super strong in the meta. And the thing is people recognize him as a scaling-oriented champion. Let's be frank, Azir is still really strong on 2 items. It's not like he's missing a big window where he needs that 3rd item to turn him online. So plays a great side lane, especially with the other mid laners that are being played right now. Scales incredibly well. He's also strong in the mid game.
I mean, that's the nature of these blind pick, any blind pick champion, really. Oh, there you go. There's a play kicked off by Destiny. Excellent hook. Flash forward, very aggressive. They're going to donate that one over to Nukeduck, and that might just be what OG need to get themselves back into control of this game. Fantastic pick. Very aggressive, and Limit was just caught unaware.
And they're approaching this tower with both Shockwave and Cask.
Crownshot going to give them respect, immediately shifting out. We'll throw down the ult as far away as possible just to make sure that he is completely safe here. And for now, all it has costed is this mid lane tier 1 tower. But of course, as we get later, it might amount to more. Frees up OG to lay down a bit more vision. It's 27 minutes in. The next Drake, of course, sole point here for SK Gaming. And as well, the Baron up and available.
Which means that now Origen are kind of playing on 2 fronts. It's not only respecting the potential soul denial from SK, but also the fact that Baron is a very viable option, especially when you have the tankiness of Sett and then the Azir. One of the other cool things that Azir can do is he can 2-mana Baron pretty effectively.
Yeah, actually, especially with the amount of tanky members on this team and having the Leandry's Nashus build as well. But now see the play here. ZaZee coming into the mid lane, but they're walking right into the trap of OG. Destiny coming out. Will get hooked. Will not connect on his hook either. It's TP on the backside for Alphari. That's the critical point now coming in for OG. ZaZee going to set up the turret and back off, denying Alphari entrance any further into the fight. OG have made the call, and it is now time to disengage. Upset getting out some cheeky damage, though, will deny SK from pushing in any further.
But the damage has been done. That's big key ultimates. Really just Upset with his ultimate left from Origen, and they have to fight here.
Going forward, Trick on the flank, but they know he's coming. Frick flashing forward, he pulls a Facebreaker, he gets him back, but no, that was catastrophic. They don't have any follow-up. Crownshot going to get pulled out to safety. Suddenly Jenax is all on his lonesome, isolated off to the side, and Alphari now looking to turn things around. Big damage coming in, but they haven't taken him out quite yet. A flash out to safety, coming over the wall, turning. Now dashing out so incredibly low, but the Azir manages to clean it up. That's a shutdown onto Alphari. Maybe, but you have bought enough time to take this one down. Trick colossal misstep costs so much in this fight, but Crownshot's now just sneaking into the pit. Upset's here, Xerxe's here, the Lantern's got to be available, ZaZee as well. They don't have a jungler though. This is actually insane. This is a terrible call. Xerxe just walks in and takes it. He says, why not just gift wrap it for us?
Backs against the wall from Origen right there. They were caught. They had to use a shockwave defensively. It felt like the soul was going to go over to SK, but they outthink SK. They stall out long enough. They outperform them, and they managed to scrape that Drake back and buy themselves some more time.
And let's take a look at it one more time. Keynotes, obviously Alphari's TP, as well as the missed hook there from Destiny. And this is what that solid start that started SK thinking that they could really take this one.
Yeah, and then here comes the defensive shockwave against Jenax just to pull the Ornn backwards. And at this point, I'm like, oh no, the damage has been done. It's really just the cask and the MF ult that's left. But, you know, from smart brush play for Nukeduck to play the top side of the fight, and then Alphari just going pretty much beast mode here, allows Origen to pull this one back. Watch Alphari play this on the back half.
So good.
Zoning away 3 members and allowing Origen to push forward with Nukeduck and Upset to win the dragon fight.
And the thing there that you have to notice is that even when Alphari dies in the end, all 3 members are laser focused on Alphari. They think of nothing else. But for now, that's going to be the Baron picked up by SK. Confidence just kicked that one off. Upset is going to use the ultimate. The thumbs up coming in for Limit. The absolute mad lad. The disrespect. I love to see it.
And it's now Baron in the hands of SK. When everyone was setting up this game, everyone's like,
I said this was the one game that should not be 50-50, that could not go either way. This is the one game, even the G2 Mad Lions game was like, oh, could go either way. The Fnatic Mystics game, I'm like, oh, could go either way. This was the game I said would for sure go in the favor of OG. There's no way. But this SK, I said they needed to show something to me. They're showing something.
But they also drafted themselves in a way to deal with Origen. Like, you know that Origen are going to be more about scaling, more about late game, more about team fights. They got everything that they wanted to try to kind of neutralize that ground there. And like, yeah, I still like some of the smart thoughts that we're seeing from Origen, how they're playing around vision, how they're trying to set up these picks. Like, Origen are trying to think their way out of this, whereas I feel like SK's composition is just better.
I completely agree. Yeah, outside of the Sett jungle, which I would still pick a Gragas.
Yeah,
Look, so here's what I will say is that, like,
listen, he's like a little zoomy truck. He just drives it Upset.
If SK had not immediately gotten that Baron when we came out of that replay,
it's tense.
It's one, it's very tense, and 2, I would have been, I think, a lot more critical of Trick, because I think Trick went for the greedy, like, flash in, you're gonna face breaker them, and immediately just gets tapped. And I think if you just flash ults there, they can maybe turn the fight, they can maybe start to shift it around. So while SK in the driver's seat, in control, looking good, hell yeah, still want to see Trick clean up a little bit, because that's a clutch moment that doesn't work out.
But I just don't even think it matters about Trick right now. Like I said, I think he's kind of like, he's like Budget Scar. He's doing the same thing. He's like zoning, he's running away, he's grabbing someone. ZaZee and Crownshot are so big right now. Limit is also having an amazing Thresh game. I know his scoreline doesn't necessarily show it, but like what he's doing in team fights, the fact that he's been so on point with these lanterns, like how much have you seen these dark passages just completely absorbed from?
I think one of the only Thresh games in a long time where I've seen more lanterns than I've seen hooks, and I've been like, hell yeah, that's what I want. Because he's just so clutch. But now the Siege is coming in, fishing for an opportunity to get this one down. Honestly, excellent ward right there next to Limit from the side of OG, giving so much information just outside of the range of that control ward, and really denying that hook over the wall from Limit, as well as just making it very clear how far OG can push up without getting caught.
And it looks like Origen have survived the onslaught of the Baron. They managed to slow SK down. We kind of saw it from the Vitality and Schalke game, especially when you have these newer members on the roster, that these new teams that have reset the rosters, maybe they get a little bit nervous when they're given control, not willing to push as hard as maybe more of our established teams. So get stalled out a bit there and give Origen some more chances to try to solve this Rubik's Cube of what they're going to do with their comp, where they're going to find these picks, how can they find these successful team fights.
And Origen is not a team that you want to give more chances to. Clearly got a game plan in mind, but Trick being in the front here is going to be tough. Zooms his way away from that hook, and SK are now split up slightly, but the Lantern will take them out to safety. ZaZee, of course, can dash as well. OG just trying to cut the wave.
I mean, everyone's cutting the wave. We're not going anywhere. We're just killing minions, and we've traded. We are on opposite sides.
That was also Alphari's TP.
And Origen have to sit here. They've got dragon control, and again, they're trying to deny Soul Point, so they just want to sit here. But I think if you're SK, oh, you can't because they'll just walk and cut the wave.
No, they'll walk and cut the wave, but look at top lane. Azir says, yeah, sure, cut that wave. We've already prepped top wave. He's moving in. He's got two waves behind him as well as a cannon creep, and they'll say, you can take the dragon, you can deny a soul point, you can match us up there, but we're going to take an inhibitor. And they've got 8-second recall time, so you can already see they're splitting their forces from OG because they know they have to defend the base.
Where were you when Origen misplayed a wave and got their base kicked in?
And now they're walking mid as well. SK Gaming, once again, we talked about it before, take the nameplates off. Who's SK, who's OG in this game? Tell me again, dear audience, because that was clean play from the
Look
side
at
of
the
SK.
indecision, too. You had Upset and Destiny peek their head to see if they were looking for a flank. You had Xerxe really wrapping around behind SK. And it's clear that in the comm, they're like, no. Like, are they going? Are they not going? When's going to be their moment? And I agree with him to pump the brakes there. Because if they take that fight, they lose, it's game over. But this is Origen's really defensive style of trying to minimize mistakes, which they just made a huge one there that SK called them on. Kind of biting them in the ass. They're stalled out against a comp that outscales them very heavily.
And now, my God, it's game 2 all over again. We're in a situation where the composition, it's got all the pieces, it can win a team fight. Is it possible? Yes, it just takes a friggin' miracle. It's actually kind of a blend of game 1, game 2, because we've got the Wombo combo on the side of OG, Orianna, Gragas, MF. Gragas obviously, assuming he hits a good cast and not a bad one. But that is so...
This has been Origen's play. These bushes on like mid lane, they're like, okay, here's what we do. Step 1, we place a control ward in the brush. Step 2, we sit in the bush and we wait for someone to face check as they get priority over mid lane.
They wanted us to play more like Fnatic and G2. Well, we figured it out. We'll sit in a bush and we'll hide and we'll wait. Not paying off, sadly, for OG. I respect the effort, but...
They're so focused on denying the Baron and the Dragon, though, because Baron's spawning in 30 seconds, so they keep losing position over their wave, and SK are like, that's fine, you can stand there, let's go!
Flash forward, facebreaker, pull the Orianna back, goodbye, Nukeduck! Now here comes the Ornn, kicking forward, Destiny's gonna get knocked up, they're gonna be happy with that pick, and they see Baron on the way, coming in, 7 seconds to spawn, SK gonna take that one for free, but that means it's all eyes on Xerxe. Can he take it away?
Does have a really long death timer, but he has TP. If Origen can stall out long enough, he theoretically could TP back, but they waved the white flag.
They're gonna hold out for another day. And at what point is it just the last white flag? You only get so many more days. You can't just keep going, okay, we'll fight you tomorrow. Eventually your Nexus is dead. I guess they're gonna fight for Soul Point in 2 minutes?
They have to.
I mean, but for SK, it's so easy, right? I think you can put Azir mid lane.
That's the story of this game. For SK, at this point, it's so easy. The only thing that's stopping you is the fact that it's SK. But so far from this game, I'm seeing a great performance from ZaZee on the Ezreal, or excuse me, Azir, just doing his job. We already talked about Limit's Thresh in these team fights, how he's very much about the Lantern. SK are playing it slow, but they're beating Origen at their own game. They drafted a composition to match it.
Yeah. I feel like OG were overconfident when they were like, oh, we'll just pick the Nautilus into the Thresh. Because the CL's so good in lane, but in late game it's so difficult because he just lanterns out whoever you're going to hit. And if you're ahead, it's fine, but if you fall behind at all, it's so just not, it's just in a different tier entirely.
Really needs some, that death cap for Nukeduck, which he's sitting on 2 needlessly large rods.
He's going to get knocked up. There's a TP flank coming in. Alphari, this is it. This is the gambit. They're hoping to find the flank, but he's going to see Trick and Jenax first. Definitely not the targets he was hoping to fight. Unstoppable there. Crownshot, though, backing away. Trick in a retreat as well. Maybe they can take down Jenax, but ZaZee's on the side as well. Trick now coming through. He's going to dunk Alphari back down. They're trying to shred through Alphari before the fight starts off, but he brilliantly, he buys time with the stopwatch. So incredibly close. That cooldown is everything in that fight. It will buy OG more time.
And the solution was, again, Origen's back to the wall like they were with that initial Drake fight. They pulled the trigger on Alphari's TP and they split SK. ZaZee went for that mid inhib, separated from them. They grabbed Jenax, they grabbed ZaZee, and it just completely puts a stop on SK charging their base.
And I gotta say that one I talked about, oh man, I'm just really impressed. I did not see the stopwatch at all coming in from the Aatrox, but I think that single cooldown actually just saved OG's game because Trick dunks him down to the backline, Alphari is instantly dead, and that is the freest follow-up into triple inhibitor you've ever seen. But because he buys so much time and they can't finish the kill off, OG come out on top.
But the issue is that it stalled it. It didn't save it.
That's
because
true.
That soul is coming up in 30 seconds now. And Origen know this. They are sprinting to get vision control or control over this area to, again, try to set up picks. But they're against, deep teleport. Hold on.
Coming through. Very fast trick now coming in. He's going to pull back. He's going to try to cleanse. He's going to try to move up, Sett through. He gets knocked back, but the CC will not be enough. Now Alphari's coming in. Jenax trying to buy as much space as he can. Crownshot free firing
ZaZee's on upset.
ZaZee now trying to shut down the MF, but he's going to zoom away. Limit. How much more heroic can this performance get? The hook connects. Limit finishes him off. The shutdown now coming in. It's the solo laners left for OG. Maybe enough as Nukeduck manages to snipe one, but Crownshot does so much damage. Alphari now trying to retreat as he throws down a bit more. Buys a bit more space for the team. Nukeduck knows he has to split. If they line up, it'll be an easy double for Crownshot to clean up. Maybe, just maybe, they can hold on to the base, but they're gonna have to concede the soul, and I know this has got to be it, Froskurinn. There's no way. Limit coming around the corner again. No, does not see Nukeduck, but there's no way it's enough. This is it. SK, I cannot believe it.
They are chunking through those towers. They have done it.
The knockoff, and here we go. Where were you when SK Gaming took down Origen? They're gonna have a lot to explain after that one. The best start to the split that SK could possibly hope for.
And we got what we wanted. We wanted to see Crownshot on his Ezreal, that when he was given the power, when you got him to a late game, he could show, yes, I can compete with them. Yet ZaZee got the Azir, did his job, perfectly done. Trick, Sett, not my favorite champion, but cool.
But here's the thing, is because the time that they played so well makes up for all the times that they fumbled, because they earned themselves additional tries, essentially. They could make mistakes, and it wouldn't let OG back into the game. And What? SK just beat OG pretty damn cleanly?
I mean, to be fair, if you're going up against Origen, you're like, we must get to Azir, because we know this game will go late, so we need to have our late game insurance policy.
That's true.
They ban all the ADCs. They first pick another ADC because the other big carry on that team is upset, so you deny what champion he has. Like, they read Origen like a book.
Not hard. People have been reading that book for a while, to be fair. Key player of the game, at least on Twitter, though. This is a day to celebrate SK, and you can choose who you want to celebrate the most. It's ZaZee, Crownshot, or Limit. I'm a big fan of that Thresh play. I'm not going to lie to you, but you cannot unappreciate ZaZee. Remember, that's his first game. Take that into account when you think about this one. But in a few minutes, we're going to hear what ZaZee has to say himself after his LEC debut. And Ender's going to break down the meta trends so far. See you after this. TLDR, Orianna is overrated as hell.
Okay. Hello. Hi, I'm Christy Frierson, back behind the LEC studio here in Berlin, Germany, where Electronic are going to be kicking off their 2020 summer tour. Let's take a deep dive interview to get a closer look at the pop sensations. Come on. So, Drakos. Hey, no, over here, please. Please, thank you. So, Drakos, what can you tell me about your creative process? How do you guys find inspiration for your wonderful music?
Well, man, to be honest, music is kind of just like the it's like the meta, man. So like when it's front to back, it's this kind of simple, you know, basic poppy chord progression. But when we get to assassin meta, that's when it really like gets wild, and we really start to like push the musical boundaries in a way that I don't really think that people have seen before. They talk about jazz as revolutionary, like you haven't even heard the stuff that we're working on, and that's not even like the half of it. When we get to a Kali meta, it gets really wild.
Welcome back to the opening week of the Summer Split. Now, there's been a lot of changes to the Rift, and after 3 games of action, let's take a look at the trends we're seeing so far. And while the games, the last 2 have been super slow, I want to reverse in time a little bit and go to G2 versus Mad Lions, which was all about early. It was very fast, and maybe what you expect with G2 versus Mad. Now, it starts off with a champion, Varus. This guy we knew was going to be so potent coming into the split. We saw his priority skyrocket over at the Mid-Season Cup, but G2 decided to pair it with Zoe for an insane poke comp. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is not the easiest comp to play out, especially in the team fights, because it requires patience. Watch how G2 here don't immediately just go on in here. Even though Wonder gets caught out of it, Caps and Perks are in the backline waiting, playing around their cooldowns. They're not going to jump the gun, and they're also going to make sure that Mad Lions can't get onto them either. They play it super slow, keep Mad Lions at arm's reach so that they can initially, or find the Drowsy that helps them turn around this fight right here. Mad Lions get poked out, get annihilated right there. That's what this comp is all about for G2. Now, one other thing that popped out to me was Wukong in the top lane. Well, the counter to Wukong that G2 brought up. As Frosk pointed out in the cast, Wukong's passive gives him a whole lot of resistances, or armor. Mordekaiser, he's doing magic damage, so in the 1v1 looks very, very good. His ultimate can also pull him out of the team fights and be very effective right there. So I liked a lot of what we saw out of G2 in the first game, even though it wasn't necessarily what we expected coming into the split. This next draft, however, from Sjokz and Vitality was what we expected. It is scaling, it is team fighting, it is all that jazz. And I want to focus less about the comp that you're going to see on the screen in a second, and more about how we actually got here, because I think this goes way back, all the way back to last spring, where this man in the top lane was all over the place. Ornn looked super, super nasty, and as teams tried to play different bruisers into it, they weren't necessarily finding the advantages that they wanted to. They said, well, if he's a tank, why don't we throw a tank up there? So we saw more Maokais, we saw more Malphites, these champions that sort of want to match and do similar things to the Ornn. But the meta, it doesn't change overnight. It is this trickle-down effect, because with more tanks in the top lane comes more responsibility on those AD carries to actually step up to the plate. And how do you make AD carries do more damage later on? Well, it's an ardent sensor, and that's where we're seeing Yuumi and Lulu, these types of champions, really skyrocket into priority. You also can take these guys because, well, your top laners are doing the front line, you're doing the initiating that most supports were doing for the majority of the spring split. And that really rose to prominence in the finals, where G2 pulled out that Lulu Cog madness that absolutely destroyed Fnatic. And the trickle down, of course, means you have scaling junglers, you have scaling mid laners. Everyone wants to do the same thing. So we're probably going to see a whole lot more of that as we move along, because coming up next, we'll see if Excel and Rogue have some tricks up their sleeve as they face off in our next game.